friends, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the books I read in March. I read 21 books in March, which is like pretty high for me, but since I don't have two jobs anymore, I have so much time to read. It's so wonderful. 8 of the books that I read this month, I held in my hands and read them physically, and then 13 of those books I either read on my Kindle or with my ears, audibly. So I think the way I'm going to do this is I'm just going to talk to you guys about the physical books I read first, and then I'll go back through my list and I'll talk about the books that I read in some other format. Physically, I had quite a few wins. Audibly or on my Kindle, not so much. So anyway, let's get started. This is not in the particular order that I read them. This is just the order in which they're in the stack. So I actually do think this is the first physical book I read this month, though, which is Near the Bone by Christina Henry. This is a horror. We're set on a secluded mountaintop. We're following this woman who is in kind of an abusive relationship with her husband. We don't really know a lot of details about that or how she ended up in this relationship. She doesn't have a ton of memory. So she's trying to kind of regain her sense of self. And at the same time, there's this like creature that is pretty obscure. We don't really know what it looks like, what it's doing, but it's obviously very intelligent and it's big. And it's killing things on the mountain, and it probably wants to kill Maddie and her husband as well. Strangers appear on the mountain, which Maddie's like, oh my gosh, my husband's not gonna like that. And so she's trying to figure out how to, 1, escape this abusive marriage, 2, relearn her like sense of self and regain her self-purpose, and 3, not get killed by these creatures. This book was written so well. The storytelling was great. The pacing was wonderful. The suspense was so good. I gave this 4.5 stars. It lost a half star just because towards the end of the book, Maddie is having these thoughts and they get pretty repetitive and kind of annoying, and I just didn't love them. But that is not enough for me to knock off a whole star. So 4.5 stars if those thoughts that she was having about her life before and like her memories or whatever were not just the same thing over and over again. This could have been a full 5 star. Christina Henry is a wonderful author. I've read several of her books, and I think this is definitely my favorite of all of her works that I've read so far. I'm excited to continue to progress through her backlist. I believe that this is technically a backlist title now. And I also think she just had a new book come out, although I don't remember any details about it. But if you like kind of a dark fairy tale retelling or just a general horror, I would recommend her as an author. Yeah, I really had a fun time reading this. I'm glad that I finally made time in my schedule to pick it up. Then I read The Boy in the Field, which is a book that my mom gave me, and I thought my mom recommended this to me, but apparently she didn't. She just gave me this book because she didn't like it enough to read it again. So I read this going in with like really high expectations because I was like, oh my gosh, my mom liked this a lot, so I'm gonna like this a lot. How can I pitch this? Okay, this is about some kids who are walking home from school and they find this boy in the field who has like apparently been stabbed, or we're not really sure. We don't get a clear picture of what happened to him, but he is like on his deathbed, okay? So they call the ambulance. I believe this is also set in like the 70s or the 90s maybe. I'm not 100% sure. And so they call the ambulance, the boy is saved, and this event kind of changes these siblings' lives pretty drastically. They start thinking about things in different lights. And this turns into a lit fic where like the mystery of who stabbed this guy and left him for dead is like totally put on the back burner. And instead we're just following how this event has affected the children in different ways. I keep saying children, they're all like teenagers, they're all in high school or more. Also, I'm just noticing that my hair is like, has it been like that the whole time? Anyway, the best way I can pitch this to you is that if Sally Rooney wrote a mystery and used quotation marks, I think that this is what she would write. Like, it's like a sad girl lit fic with like the event that someone gets stabbed and we're trying to figure out who did it, but also it seems like the book doesn't really care about that. This is a hard thing to talk about. It is a weird little book. I read this, I gave it 3.5 stars just because I kind of like the writing was pretty solid, and I did kind of like the lit fic. But I just felt like the overall premise of the story didn't know what it wanted to be. Like, did it want to be a mystery or did it want to be a lit fic? And if it was trying to be a mysterious lit fic, I think that it failed at that, but it did the lit fic part really well. I also read Burnt Town by Jennifer McMahon. I talk about her a lot on my channel. I'm making my way through her backlist. Every time I think that I'm caught up, there's like something else that I haven't read. I genuinely thought that The Winter People was her first book, so if that was the case, I would be completely caught up now. But she actually has a bunch more books that she wrote before that. I just don't think she really gained popularity until she wrote The Winter People, which is a great horror. She writes these like very, very lightly paranormal thrillers that also have some horror aspects. Like this is like a horrific thriller. I don't know how to tag her books. They always have kind of like this weird little plot line that runs through them. In this case, it's this lady that has like a paper circus, a tiny circus in her living room. That's like a weird plot line that runs through. God, this is a hard book to talk about because there's so much going on. This book does not do the traditional flip-flop between generational timelines like her other books do, but I will say that there is like the first like 50 pages of the book are set in like the 70s, and then the rest of the book is set in present day. We still get multiple perspectives. Again, a lot of times in Jennifer McMahon's books, we only get perspectives like from inside the family. In this book, we get outside perspectives. We're following this teenage girl, and something happened to her family a couple years ago. She's homeless now, and there's someone essentially after her. Her mother committed suicide, but it wasn't true. She was murdered, as was her father, as was her father's parents. And so it's kind of this generational, like, who's killing this family and what's going on and why. This was a fine book. Again, I gave it 3.5 stars. It was a super quick read. I always really enjoy what Jennifer McMahon writes. I think she writes very easy to consume kind of horror thriller situations. This is not my favorite of hers. The Winter People is by far my favorite, and The Night Sister, I was gonna pull it down, but it's wedged in there pretty good. Those are my two favorites. I have noticed a general trend where like her older books, like this one, again, The Winter People and The Night Sister, I really tend to enjoy, and her newer books, I am like slowly less and less enjoying. Okay, I'm gonna try to talk less now because I just realized how long I've been talking for, and we need to get this thing rolling, otherwise we're gonna be here forever. I just finished The Virgin Suicides today. This book was an unexpected 5-star for me. It's the only 5-star, like true 5-star that I gave out this month. This is again kind of a polarizing book. I think a lot of people love it and a lot of people hate it. We're basically just following these girls that commit suicide. This is not a dark book, although the subject matter is dark. We're kind of following this collective narrative of teenage boys that like watched this happen because they lived in the same neighborhood. We don't really know the numbers of boys or like which boys are involved in the collective narrative, but they kind of are obsessed with these girls, and they're reflecting on these events that happened during this year when all of the girls in this family died. I really don't know how to pitch this other than that the writing is some of the best writing I've ever read. I don't annotate books, but like I have huge portions annotated in here and like so many notes, and like I was really going crazy because the writing in here is like delicious. So it must be good if I annotated it. This is the first book I've annotated, I think, since I graduated college. So I loved this. Would I recommend it? No. Not to anyone. I don't even know how to recommend this, but I really enjoyed it. Very lit ficky. Again, I love like a sad girl lit fic. I don't know that I would describe this as that either. This is just a tough book to talk about it, but I gave it 5 stars and it was so fun, and I'm so glad that I read it. I also read The Wizard of Oz this month, which I recently talked about in a spring TBR. I happened to have an afternoon where I wasn't doing anything. Sorry, there's hair in my mouth. And so I picked this up. It took me, I think, like 45 minutes to read. The illustrations in here are super cute. I'm not going to talk about the plot because we all know the plot of The Wizard of Oz. I'm pretty sure this is an abridged version. One of my subscribers like pointed out that these illustrated classics are often abridged, so I'm not sure that I really got the full story in here. What I will say is I read this and it was pretty much exactly what I was expecting it to be, and I gave it 3 stars, and I'm gonna like probably unhaul it now because I don't see myself ever reaching for this again. Then I did my book of the month vlog, so I have all those books together, so you can go watch that if you care to hear more thoughts about these. Listen for the Lie by Amy Santera. This was a 4.5 star. Super fun, sarcastic narration. This woman is accused of killing her best friend. She has no memories from that night. The podcast element in here is extremely well done. I've said this so many times in so many videos now because I've talked about this in like 4 videos in a row, but the podcast in here is the best that I've ever seen a podcast done in a thriller, and I really appreciated the character dynamics, the grandma relationship, the way that Lucy is just so over all of it, and it was so good and so fun and so silly, and I really couldn't see the end coming until the end came. So this is 4.5 stars, close to 5 stars, not quite there, but we can round up for the sake of this video and say that I gave this 5 stars. Then I read The Removed by Brandon Hobson, which is a story following this family whose son has died like 15 years ago. So we're 15 years in the present, and they're all kind of dealing with their grief in their own way, and it mixes with these Cherokee stories and legends, and we kind of see how that manifests. The issue I had with this was that I just didn't really connect with any of the characters other than the mom. I think that if this book had been told just from the mom's perspective with the inserts of the stories, this book could have been 4, maybe even 5 stars for me. But because we got the brother and the sister's perspective and they didn't really add anything to the story for me, this was a 3-star. And it was fine. Like, I think it did what it was trying to do, but it just didn't do what I like. The last physical book I read was The Magnolia Palace by Fiona Davis. This is a historical fiction, dual timeline situation. We're following a woman in the 1920s who ends up kind of running away from her life as she knew it. She was a sculpture model. A murder happens in her building and she somehow is connected with it, but she actually had nothing to do with it. So she runs away. She ends up getting a job at the Magnolia Palace, which is this sprawling estate filled with art. And Lillian kind of gets to see the darker side of this family and kind of what is going on under wraps. There's also a diamond that goes missing at the time that Lillian is working there, but we don't really know what happened to it, where it went. No one ever reported it missing, so it's like a historical mystery situation. And then we're also in the 70s with this model who is from Europe somewhere, and she ends up getting stuck in the Magnolia Palace after her photo shoot, and she starts to find these clues, and she's like, maybe I'm gonna find the diamond, and the stories intertwine, and we see how that happened. This was so boring and it felt so long, and I didn't think that the mystery aspect was well done. I think I could have really enjoyed this had it been 100 pages shorter, because there was a lot of stuff going on in here that I just didn't really care about. This does have a high incorporation of art and discussions of art and mediums of art, so if you like that, I think that this could be for you. That's just not something that I am well versed in or know a lot about, so it's not something that's fun for me to read about. Quickly, the only book I read on my Kindle this month was Montana Sanctuary. This is for a video that's coming out probably in like 5 months. I'm reading a lot of like KU Amazon romances, and we can talk about that when that video goes up. This book was not good. I didn't like it, and that's all I'm gonna say about it. You can listen to my full thoughts when that video comes out, like in summertime at some point, because that's how long it's gonna take me to finish. Again, I already talked about this in my road trip March vlog, but I read The Office of Historical Corrections. This is an anthology of stories about contemporary America dealing with kind of historical injustices and historical issues over time in a contemporary lens. It was fun. I thought it was really well written. We're getting only the perspectives of women in this book. My favorite story was one that I can't remember the title of now, but you can go watch my road trip video if you care to hear about it. The writing was great. I thought that the stories had a good flow. They didn't connect to each other. They were just all set in contemporary America, and that was the connection. Overall, very quick read. I enjoyed listening to it. I thought the narrators did a great job, and it was a fun time. Okay, then 4 of the audiobooks I read this month were The Spiderwick Chronicles, which you will see in a video coming out shortly, although I'm not exactly sure when. These are written by Holly Black. Yes, the Holly Black that wrote the Cruel Prince series, that Holly Black. These were a staple in my childhood, so they were all rereads for me. The nostalgia really hits. Are these books really good? I can't say for sure, but in my mind they are. They're like children's fantastical dark horror, I would describe these as. They get pretty dark for being like middle grade books. There's like a scene in the end of book 4 where like a bunch of goblins get like slaughtered, and it's pretty graphic for like little kids to be reading that, but I remember just eating that up when I was like 10 years old. So anyway, these books are very old. They're 20 years old this year, I think, though the last one in the series is. So I read those. They were fun. You'll see me talk about those in a video. I also read Icebreaker on my road trip, which is one of the worst new adult romances I've ever read in my entire life. I hated it. And again, I'm not gonna say much more than that. There was just a lot of sex and not a lot of ice skating or hockey, which I feel like if you're gonna pitch me a sports romance, I should at least get one scene where I get to watch either the hockey game or the ice skating competition situation. I got neither of those things. So was this a hockey romance or an ice skating romance? No, it was a new adult romance set in college where people are stupid and have a lot of sex, and I didn't like it. Then I read 5 Tuesdays in Winter by Lily King, which is another short story collection. Lily King is the author of Writers and Lovers. It's over there, right there. This was so lyrically written. I gave it 4 stars. I had so much fun reading it. Oh, backtrack to Icebreaker. I gave that 1.5 stars. I love Lily King's writing. It felt very like light. This honestly would be a great book for my spring book recommendations video. I just wasn't thinking about it, but this would be so good for that. Most of it is not set in winter, and it's just following like contemporary issues, and the stories were just so written and so good. I had so much fun. If you like Lily King's writing, pick this up. It was wonderful. I always listen to like a cleaning book when it's springtime and I start to do my spring cleaning, because then it like inspires me. I like have my little audiobook in and I'm like, oh, I can like throw all this stuff away, and it's so great. So I listened to The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning while I was doing that. Am I dying? No. Do I have a strong desire to get rid of a lot of stuff in my house? Not really. But I felt like this was better than last year's pick, which was Marie Kondo's book, and that felt like I was being personally attacked. So this was nice, and I don't really have any thoughts. I didn't rate it. It was just like what I listened to as I was cleaning out my house from the winter time, if that makes sense. I also read Shark Heart this month, which you will see me talk about again in a video that's going up soon, although I can't exactly say when. I don't get the hype behind this book. I don't get why people are obsessed. I thought it was fine. I gave it 3 stars. I liked the first half of the book, and you know, if you've read it, that there's like a subject change. I don't know if that's a spoiler or not, so I'm not going to say like how the book changes, but basically we get like a change of narration, a change of timeline. I really disliked the second half of the book, but I really liked the first half of the book. The second half of the book just let me down. Shark Heart is a story about this woman whose husband starts turning into a shark because they live in a world where people turn into animals. I gave it 3 stars. It was fine. Then I read The Perfect Mother by Amy Malloy, who wrote Goodnight Beautiful. I think that's what it's called, which I really liked, which is a misery retelling. It was really good. So I was like, oh, this is gonna be like super good. I already know that I like this author. She's solid. This book was so boring. It was so boring. I didn't like understand the point of it. Like, I didn't feel thrilled. I felt like I saw the plot twist coming from a mile away. There was lots of like random things going on in this mom group that like, I'm like, why are all of these women like terrible or creepy like stalker people? Like, what's going on? They're all crazy. This book follows this mommy group, and one of the moms, her child goes missing, and we're trying to figure out who took the baby. That's essentially it. But there's so much convoluted things going on, and I just didn't care. But I just felt like it was too much. It was trying to do too much, and it didn't end up doing anything at all. So that's how I felt about that one. Then I read Blood, Water, Paint. Okay, I loved this. This is a novella about this woman who existed in real life. So it's like kind of nonfiction, but it's also kind of fiction. It's like an imagining of what she's going through at this time. Basically, she is a painter, and I think, hold on, let me read the plot synopsis real quick so I don't get this wrong. Okay, of course the plot synopsis doesn't say. Well, not the point. We're following this woman a long time ago, like 1700s, 1600s maybe. She wants to be a painter, but obviously like women aren't painters, so she like paints, and then her father puts his signature on the paintings and he sells them. And she is kind of grappling with the fact that she never gets credit for her work, and that she really is incredible, and she like knows her value, but because she's a woman, she doesn't get any of that reward from her craft. She ends up studying with this man who she kind of falls in love with, but he ends up being a terrible, god-awful man. She ends up painting this scene where this woman is sexually assaulted. It's a very famous painting, and she's like taking her own spin on it, and she's reflecting her own experiences because this man is awful to her. Just going through a lot, okay? And I thought it was so beautifully done, well written. The like painting as a metaphor, so good. Her multiple women subjects that she paints, female subjects that she paints in various like hardships, and it really helps her get through her own kind of trauma in her life. And it was just so good. Like, I don't even know, this book is hard to recommend, it's hard to talk about, but you should read it. It was so good. I gave it 4.5 stars. Chef's kiss. I think if I had read this physically, honestly, it would be 5 stars. So I might try to find myself a physical copy of this and reread it in like a year from now and see if my opinions change, because it was just so good. And then the last book I read this month was The Fact of a Body, which is a nonfiction about this woman who is a lawyer, and she again has like sexual assault trauma in her past, and so she ends up wanting to be a defense lawyer like against the death penalty. And her first interaction with this is for a man that has murdered a little boy, perhaps sexually assaulted him as well. So she's like grappling with her own past, with this man's past, and how she feels about the legal system and justice and all of this. Like, it was a fine memoir. Did I learn anything new? Like, not really. Did I enjoy reading it? Yeah, I thought it made some good points, but it didn't really teach me anything. And I like to learn stuff from nonfiction. I realized that this is half memoir, half reflecting on the legal system. So can a memoir really teach me stuff? I don't know. I gave it 3.5 stars. I just think that it did an okay job at presenting the topics, and I don't think that I really got anything out of it overall. So that is my month of March in reading. Happy April to you. I actually think this is going up on Easter, so if you celebrate Easter, happy Easter to you, and I'll see you in another video soon. Bye.